Hello, everyone. This is a lesson 41 of the 5th grade Excel curriculum, and this lesson focuses on converting within customary units. It is important that students have a resource very similar to one that they might be given on a standardized assessment or interim assessment that shows them standard conversions within customary units because they are going to need to reference that, particularly during the independent practice. This lesson starts with fluency as always, where students are practicing their multiplication facts. As students are working, you want to pay attention to how they're doing on their 7s, their 8s, and their 9s. And these are the problems that you're going to want to review with students should you notice that they're getting a number of them incorrect or that they're struggling to get through them and skipping them to move on to others. Then we jump into the heart of the session today, and this starts with an example. In this example, you can see that we are converting between pounds and ounces, and they are telling students that 1 pound equals 16 ounces. That is critical. When we move to step 2, they're telling us that when we multiply to convert a larger unit to a smaller unit, we always multiply. So when we're converting a smaller to a larger unit, we want to make sure we note that we always multiply. So you want to just emphasize this with students before looking at the problem. Now you can see that they use the fact that 1 pound equals 16 ounces to determine the number of pounds in 2, 3, and 4 ounces. What you want to ask students is how do they know that they can always multiply by 16 ounces? And you want to hear from students because 1 pound equals 16 ounces, therefore, I can always use 16 to figure out the number of ounces in any number of pounds. This will help them as they get to the discussion question for the day, where they're asked to explain how to find the number of ounces in 16 pounds. Here, you don't care about the answer. You want to focus on the process. Push kids to do a turn and talk, lap around, listen to answers, push a student or probe a student to share their answer out loud where they're saying, we multiply 6 by 16 because I know that 1 pound equals 16 ounces, and I know that ounces is smaller than pounds, so therefore we multiply. That is a complete answer that you want to get from students. And we use that to move to example B. Step 1 of example B shows that students are converting between hours and minutes. So it tells them that 1 hour equals 60 minutes. In step 2, again, they're reminding them that since we're converting from a larger unit to a smaller unit, we multiply. Because I know that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, I can use that to multiply by all the other number of hours to determine the number of minutes. You will notice in step 3 that they ask students to write their answers in a numbered pair. This is not essential for today's lesson, so you can feel free to skip that because it could distract kids and it doesn't impact their understanding of the lesson for the day. Now we jump into the try it. Here in this try it, we are converting from minutes to seconds, which is not what we were doing above. So you want to make sure kids see the difference that we're going from minutes to seconds and push them to create a table, just like we did before. We're going to start with minutes and we're going to seconds. And you ask students, what number do we start with? How many minutes do we always start with? We always start with 1. How many seconds are in a minute? There would be 60. Now I can use that information to determine how many seconds are in 6 minutes. I can multiply 60 by 6 and get 360 seconds. This table is going to be critical for students to demonstrate their understanding and to make their thinking visible. So you want to make sure you see that table from all students. Then you jump into the practice for the day. Before kids begin, you want to have them circle question 17, 14, and 18. These are exit tickets. They should not be done during the independent practice. That's where you want them to do that silent solo without your support so that you can see how much students have learned for the day. When they jump into these problems, they are going to need to use that resource that was referenced earlier. And you want to make sure that on every question you see a table. So for example, for question 15, I should see a table with yards and feet. And I should see that 1 yard equals 3 feet. So now I want to figure out how many yards are in 25 feet so that students can just show you that visual, and that helps you see what they're thinking. Question 16 is really going to require a lot of work from students to do a number of conversions. So again, a table is going to be critical there. And I also want to point at number 21. Here, you want to make sure that you see student's name, that 1 hour has 60 minutes. So that's the equivalent of making the table. And then you want to see them say, we multiply. And we multiply 60 by 60 to find the answer. So what's critical if we were to stamp the things that you want to see from children and hear from children? You want children to be able to tell you that if I'm moving from a larger unit to a smaller unit, I always multiply. Whenever I need to convert, I always start with 1. I make a table, and that helps me figure out any number of conversions within those units that they're given. Have a great lesson, everyone.